Hello and welcome back to the Student Pages podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Grace Sanders, joining you. And today I'm joined by my lovely guest, Apex Zero. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Where are you joining me from this evening?
I'm in West London, Brentford, West London. Yeah.
I'm quite curious. Have you seen most recently on Twitter the Tottenham Court Road baubles? That's all I've been talking about all week.
Nah, I ain't seen it at all. People are excited about it.
I say people, just me. I'm on a very niche corner of the internet. Long story short, some of the Christmas decorations, which they've foolishly put up in November, so it's their own fault really, have been falling around on the streets and crashing into cars, taking out pedestrians. And if there's one way that I'd want to go, it's by giant bauble.
That sounds like a very British thing to happen. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know when when they're like, "Oh, how did she die?" And it was just like, yeah, the giant baubles were just falling all over the place.
But we're not here to talk about Christmas. We're not here to talk about giant baubles. Of course, we're here to talk about you as such. If you could, for all the listeners out there, give us a little bit of background about what you do as an artist, as a musician.
As you said, my name's Apex Zero. I've considered myself a multidisciplinary artist. So I started out as an MC and I still do that. It's very much like the core of what I do. I also make films and photography. And I'm very much about kind of bringing people together for like a community experiences. And so I guess that community building is a big thing for me. So I've been blessed to be sort of brought into a number of communities by people who I greatly respect. But I've also helped to sort of found a few. And the latest thing I'm working on at the moment is called Drummer Warrior Storyteller, which is a visual album, huge collaborative piece of work with dancers, filmmakers, photographers, metalsmiths, blacksmiths, painters. Yeah, it's a lot of different people involved, theatre directors, lighting engineers, visual effects artists. And yeah, it's been a sort of huge labor of love and feels like we're really going in the direction that we're trying to go in.
We have so much to dig into on your latest exhibition, Drummer Warrior Storyteller. But can you give us a little bit of information about your background and journey actually into music? I know you mentioned that you started out life as an MC and that your artistic life as an MC. Can you define what an actual MC means to you? I know that many people might be familiar with an MC as like JME says it. But what kind of background do you have there?
Well, I started in the underground UK hip hop scene, and so it's kind of like I guess sort of mid 2000s, and it was I don't really like the term necessarily, but quite like political music. So kind of was involved with movements like the Speakers Corner movement. I'm one of the organizers of End of the Week, which is a global hip hop community. So I guess a lot of people might recognize it a bit more as being a rapper. And I don't mind that term at all. I embrace that term a lot, but just there was a time when I was much more drawn to the idea of calling myself an MC, and I guess I still am. Just because I think there's certain connotations. There was connotations at that time, this sort of differentiation between the two, which I don't really subscribe to anymore. But I think also because I'm coming out of London, the tradition you could call it, or the culture is very much this kind of sound system culture, live music culture, which I think hip hop comes out of as well. Just again at that sort of time when I was coming up, it was very much more about making tracks, and releasing music, which is also very much what I do. But I especially for sort of jungle and drum and bass, is something I'm sort of really passionate about as well, and spent a long time kind of on that scene as well, not so much in this country but more internationally. So there's something about that kind of live element, of hosting events. Did a lot of sort of squat parties back in the day of just sort of, like running the dance. And to me, that's like massively important, as much as it, as important as what, being what might be considered a rapper, being a live MC is equally important to me, So I choose to claim that term, you know what I mean?
There's something about the London music scene which to me still feels like very organic, especially when you get to like intimate venues and things such as this. Even though like you have like so many like larger artists now that have kind of broken through, like Stormzy, AJ Tracy, who will still go and do these incredibly small shows because you can tell they still love the music.
No, there's nothing like it. And I think it's one of them things where when I was like deep in it young, I guess I had ambitions to go on to do bigger things or to go and be around the world or whatever and be in certain big places. It's easy to take it for granted. Do you know what I mean? How dope the music scene is in London. You know, I did a round table discussion with Congo Natty a few years ago, and he was saying like there's at least 7, 8 genres that have come out of London alone. You know what I mean? Like, and that doesn't really happen in many other places in the world, you know? And of course, there's like a massive international diasporic, you know, melting pot reason why that is. You know, it's not just the fact that it's not just London alone, you know, it's the Caribbean, it's Africa, it's India, it's all these other different places and people who are here in this melting pot that's London. But when you're in it, and especially when you ain't really been anywhere else, it's easy to kind of sort of not know how we're perceived around the world, you know what I mean? And then having gone to other places, more so now maybe than ever before, apart from maybe sort of when jungle was at, or, you know, drum and bass were at their prime, like people love it and people are like mesmerized by it. And it's like this cultural, spiritual home for people all over the world who are making music that's related to this and is influenced by this. And I think one thing that's really great about the time now with like UK drill and grime and, you know, what's happening at the moment with Afrobeats, you know, Afrobeats sounds coming out of London even, you know, we're aware of that now. Whereas I think there was a time before when we weren't. When I was lucky enough to go live in China for a couple of years, I was living in Beijing, seeing people on the complete other side of the world, loving this scene that I was sort of taking for granted, it gave me a new appreciation for it. You know what I mean? To just be like, this is something special, because it's something, you know, when I travel sort of not for music and you try and find a club somewhere, a lot of the time they don't exist or they're not the same, you know. It's very much that kind of, and no disrespect to anyone else's kind of music, but sort of very sort of like how, you know, like dance music, kind of sort of pop dance music kind of thing, which is fine if people like that, do you know what I mean? But there's nothing like that kind of gritty vibrancy that comes out of London. And a lot of the time when you do find clubs that are really popping around the world, they're playing that, or they're playing something related to that, mixed with, you know, things like reggae and hip hop and soca and Afro beats, do you know what I mean? Which, you know, again, are all part of the same tradition, you know?
It's interesting to see how a lot of like American artists have kind of taken on that sort of London-based like theme almost. You can sometimes hear American artists trying to put on a London accent, which sometimes it's like, it's most recently been the other way around, which I find interesting.
Yeah, I find it quite bizarre. It's like, it's mad, because when I was coming up, there was still like people trying to put on American accents to rap, you know what I mean? And like with people like London Posse and Son of Noise and Hijack, like they you know, they were really kind of the people who were starting to break that, you know what I mean? And it was, you know, by the time I was there was a very clear line between like the Skinny Mans and the Kalashnikovs and the Black Twangs, who were just like, no, we don't do that. And if you do that, you're getting laughed out of the space, do you know what I mean? And so to see it go the other way is wild to me, you know, that it's like, people are really trying to do this accent, you know what I mean? But then again, I get it, you know, I understand it. It's like when, you know, if you're a dancehall artist or a rag artist, however you want to describe them things as well, it's like there's a kind of need to catch the beat in a certain way. Do you know what I mean? That you have to kind of take on at least some level of an accent or a flow, you know? And so if you're trying to have a particular sound, there's gonna sort of maybe need to be a generation that do that before it can get turned into its more organic or more like natural or locally embedded way of doing things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can sort of see as well. I suppose this is more of a challenging question, but do you think some of that like organic nature has been lost with the mass production or like the mass replication of London culture?
I think in a lot of ways, the kind of that mass production is less so than it was at a time. I feel like the sort of music industry proper, that you might call it, you know, the big labels and these things, I don't feel like they have as much say or control over these things anymore, right? And someone like AJ Tracy, you mentioned there, like, saw a thing with him recently talking about how he had the chance to go to sign to certain labels and he decided, you know, people like Jammer and them were advising him to sort of go do it on his own, and he did, you know? And so it's like he has that control over his career to be as big as he is, but still have that control. Like, you know, people like The Boy Better Know and all of them who are in control of their music and in control of their lives and own all their stuff, do you know what I mean? Or are then in a position to then go and sign to a label, but have a lot more power and control in that. I think that, along with the fact that like the ecosystem of the internet and these things, and there's still issues with, you know, the Spotify's and the streaming services and whatever else, but like, you can now release music all over the world and build a fan base and connect with people and get shows and get bookings and travel the world with this thing. And that to me allows for that organicness and that cross-pollination of ideas to really thrive. And I think it's really thriving at the moment. You know, I think anything that kind of is, you know, I would say even things that are sort of massively mainstream, if that even is a thing anymore, still feel really, really organic. You know, like Stormzy's latest thing, fire. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that he can be who he is, still be out on the road, you know, repping for the family of Chris Carver, you know what I mean? And then put all of those people who he did, which is the lineage of Black music in this country, in his video and shout it out and show respect to it, and then get love. You know what I mean? To me, shows where we're at, and I love it.
Yeah, I think what keeps it so foundational is like the meaningfulness of those lyrics as well, that really do hit home and like keep it grounded so much. And you can tell that there's still the passion there. Speaking of passion and vision, can you tell us a little bit more about your latest exhibition, Drummer Warrior Storyteller? I believe that the first show happened last weekend.
Yeah, it was the first big one, the first sort of one we've been building up to with the theatre show. But we've done a few things because it's by nature it's a multifaceted project. So it's named after Chinua Achebe's perception of storytelling. It was one of like an incredibly prominent Nigerian novelist and essayist and writer, and he describes his understanding of storytelling as the drummer being the one who calls forth the people, the warrior goes forward and fights the war, and it's the storyteller who survives, passes on the history, and gives meaning to the survival of those who survived. And as I was building the project and I heard an interview with him and he said these words, I was like, I feel like that's what I've been trying to do for all the time I've been making music and art, you know? And so I kind of took that on and then linked up with a producer called Steph B and a creative director called Muti Musafiri. And they really sort of like put the battery in my back to be like, yo, let's grow this into something bigger. There's so much scope here for what it might be. And I've just been blessed to kind of be guided towards a bunch of different people who've been interested in it and wanted to collaborate on it. And so we started off with music and then made a film, and then out of the film came photography, paint. We made a second film, and out of that came metalsmithing and blacksmithing. Through the theatre design, there's been costume design, and all these different things have just been growing, just constantly growing, you know, with the collaboration. And so we premiered the first film at Breaking Convention at Sadler's Wells. We did on the 230th anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, we did an exhibition at the Hackney Social, and then we did the Bernie Grant Centre in Tottenham. And then that all led up to us being at Rich Mix last Saturday night, and we put on the exhibition in its biggest form with everything that's been made so far, and then put on an immersive theatre show, which was absolutely electric. It was powerful. We have Orisha high priestesses who come in and set the tone, who invite our ancestors into the space for us to do this thing properly. Have incredible drummers from a brother called Demba, who's a phenomenal dundun player, and then Ukombozi Ancestral Drums, who I drum with, set the tone, as well as a brother called Musa Dembele, who plays the kora. And so we had this real mix of kind of like hip hop beats, soundscapes created by a brother called Tile, who's phenomenal, visual effects by a brother called Daniel, and yeah, just all of these different elements of dance, theatre, hip hop, live African music, just kind of come together in this beautiful way that just really, really has affected the people who were there and really affected us on stage, you know. And so it's just been a real blessing to be able to do this, and we're looking to keep doing it and take it further, you know.
You mentioned a lot of individuals and a lot of names there that have kind of contributed to this like body of multi-medium art. What does it mean to you to have like these people so close to you, kind of living and breathing the experience with you?
It's everything to me. And it's, you know, when people sharing something that you're doing, and not just like in a casual way, like, oh, you know, they're being paid to be here, so they're here kind of thing. Like, you know, obviously, of course, people are being paid, but like, everyone involved is really resonating with the project, and they're there because they want to be involved, and they believe in what's going on, you know, and they believe that it's going to have an impact on the world. And, you know, that's what I've always been trying to do. Everything that I've been striving towards is to genuinely impact change in the world, and to see that it's happening, to see that it's affecting people. I feel fully like, as if, you know, I know that the Most High and the ancestors are working for us to get this work done. And it feels very much like everything in my life has kind of led up to this point. All the things I've had to go through that are in the story, all of the things that I've had to endure, but also all the things that I've learned, all the skills that I've got, all the people I've connected with, you know, all the connections I have with people around the world that have fed into my learning and my journey. These people I'm collaborating with are huge parts of that, you know, and for them to all sort of lend their skills and their being to make this become what it's becoming is beautiful, and it's a wonderful thing, and it feels genuinely guided. Like, all the way through this thing, I've needed someone to do something, for example, and then they just kind of appear, you know, and not only just appear, they're brilliant at what they do. They want to be involved, and we find a way to involve them, you know, and it just feels right. And Saturday night was like a huge, beautiful manifestation of that. So I'm very, very grateful.
It's so lovely to hear how passionate you are about this project, as well as like the people that you've connected with. If there's like I say, one thing or one message that you want, like, viewers, maybe that's the correct word for like multimedia viewers or audience, to take away from this experience, what would it be? Because it sounds like you've got a really powerful message to put across.
I think it's about growth, and I think it's about unity, and I think it's about love. That can sound like a bit of a cliche at times, and actually when I was younger, I spent a long time, I'd say, actively trying to make music that wasn't about love. Do you know what I mean? Because I felt like that was something that was so oversaturated and done so much that I was like, you know, I feel like there wasn't enough attention being given to the issues and the problems that exist in the world that need to be addressed and need to be dealt with. And so I actively sought to make music that did that, and not just music, but like, you know, the activism I was involved in, the movements I was part of, were all very much gained at sort of community organization, protest, you know, global change. And I think for a long time, because of how angry I was and how angry so much of this makes me, and still does. Yeah, I'm not ever gonna pretend like I'm not raging all the time. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, and I think again, there's a healthy but also sometimes unhealthy fear of anger, as if, like, you know, that it's unproductive or it can't do things. And someone like Audre Lorde, the work of Audre Lorde has really, really spoken to me about this need for for anger to be that fire can feed you, you know, and keep you warm when there's no one else around to support you, which she says. I stand by that, but at the same time, it can become a lot, and it can that same fire can burn you. Do you know what I mean? And it can burn you out, and it can take its toll on you. And one thing that I have learned and grown, I think, as I've got older, do you know what I mean? As I've mellowed a little bit, and as I've sort of traveled the world and seen things and had experiences, I feel very much that isn't the only way to make changes, you know, and there can be this multifaceted, multiplicitous, many sort of battlefields or many areas that can be worked and developed on that are happening and can happen at the same time, all with the objective of improving the situation and to you know, take power away from those who have it and abuse it, and give it to people who have it but don't know it, you know. And for us to sort of, I don't want to spend my life anymore striving to destroy something I disagree with. I'd rather spend my life building something that I do greatly believe in, and then if we're going to fight, we fight to defend that, you know. I think that's to me, that just sounds like a better way to live. And I think this project is helping me do that, and I hope it helps others to do the same.
I think especially in like the current socio-political climate, like I know that I stay away from Twitter, from the news, just because you are just all consumed by the fact that nothing's ever going to get better, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's so positive to hear someone like actually verbalize that instead of trying to batter something down, you can build something up in order to create kind of like a stronger posture towards that. Do you think that's why that you chose the avenue of like a multi-medium art for this exhibition, because there was too much and too many avenues to come from?
I don't think it was a conscious decision like that. I don't think it was like, I'm trying to achieve this, so I need to do these things. I think it was a combination of things that one, I have a great passion for film and I have a great passion for music. And so I wanted to challenge myself to do something more than what I'd done before. And I think I went through a great period of learning through traveling the world and being able to see different things and see what other people are doing. As well as I went through this phenomenal Yopo ceremony. My brother Natty took us out to Venezuela to film a documentary connected to his album, Release the Fear. And it was like the sort of peak of a mountain I've been climbing for a long time. When I got to this point, and it really did like level me up. And I came back with this passion to just do more, you know, and be more, and work on those lessons. And so instead of sort of, I don't know, I feel like I spent a long time trying to figure out what it is I was trying to do in life. And it was this kind of I was kind of caught in this bind between trying to be seen in terms of the music and in terms of getting out there. I think for a long time I did just accept that I was an underground MC or underground artist. I didn't really have ambitions to be like a pop musician or enter in the charts or nothing like that. But then at the same time, you still have to kind of get yourself out there, do you know what I mean, and do what you're doing. But then also trying really hard not to be seen because of certain other things I was doing, you know, and that require quiet to make important moves, you know what I mean? And so like, I just kind of came back as a kind of older person and just sort of very comfortable with who I am and what I do, and just started making with a kind of renewed purpose. And with not really the need to feel like I got to rush this, because, you know, it's not like I'm trying to get into a certain cycle of, you know, promotion or I don't know, whatever people do around charting or anything like that. It was just like, I'm making the work and the work is the work, you know? And so every time it got to a next stage, it was like, right, I'm going to try, and if I need something, who can deal with this? And I've just been blessed, like I said, to have this group of people around me and this growing group of people around me, family, that have these skills, and I help them as much as I can when I want to, and that help is reciprocal, you know what I mean? We build together on in this way. And so at every stage, someone else is offering to do something, and it's like, well, I'm not going to say no, do you know what I mean? This is a living project, you know. It's not like something, and again, it's not to disrespect anyone, and I know and I get the reason why people do certain things they do in the industry, but like, if I'm still doing this in 5 years, I'm not really bothered if people are like, oh, you're still doing that, do you know what I mean? Because it's an ongoing living project, and we're looking to take this around the world, to connect with different audiences and different drumming and storytelling communities and cultures, and plug people into it, you know what I mean, and keep it growing. And so, as I said, it just feels like this is very much my life's work, and this is what my life's been building up to. And so making it as big and as multifaceted and as multimedia and as ongoing and living and connected to as many people as possible feels like the goal. And, you know, it's quite hard to do that with something small, you know. So if it needs to grow, it will grow as big as it wants to grow, because like I said, it's alive, and the more it becomes itself, it will know what it wants to do, whether that's with me or beyond me, or who knows, you know.
Yeah, I completely, like, I can see like the fact that it's a complete body in itself is like living and breathing through all of the different people within the project. Not that I'm going to try to force you into favorites, but is there one kind of artistic medium that kind of excited you the most? Because I'm hearing like entertainment metalsmith, and I'm like, oh wow, maybe that's the career for me. That composer.
I definitely don't have a favorite, but the metalsmithing was, I've always wanted to do it. I've always wanted to try blacksmithing, and my sis Roxanne, I'm really grateful to her for bringing me in. I got to shout her out every time because she is Roxanne Simone. She is the first African diasporic Black woman to curate a show at Goldsmiths Fair at Goldsmiths Hall, which is like the biggest honor in their field, you know. And so she's huge, and she's an immense talent and character, and with this incredibly like cultivated skill that she has. And for her to like bless me with the opportunity to not only work with her, but then to bring me in and let me have a go at this thing I've always wanted to try, it was thrilling. And so we went up to Sheffield with these, again, like brilliant blacksmiths called G&T blacksmiths, and they welcomed us into their forge. You know, they provided the materials, they helped to sort of skill exchange with Roxanne, and so she was teaching them things, they were teaching her things, and we made this. Roxanne made this. I just watched them filmed and did a little bit of hammering. You know what I mean? Roxanne made this cutlass, which was really powerful and really symbolic, and she's named it Harvest Rebellion because it was this tool which is often sort of taken for granted as something that's sort of synonymous with Caribbean and African cultures. It's what was used to subjugate us, to enslave us, you know what I mean, to have us working in the cane fields and the other fields. But then we use that to liberate ourselves, right? To fight back against our enslavers and our oppressors. And then we use that to forge our new nations, right? And new worlds. And so to have that like embodied in a piece of work that's in this, which she's then etching with lyrics from the tracks and photographs of our families, you know what I mean? It's like, it's such beautiful work. All the work is beautiful, but to me that was, it stands out just because of its power and its strength, and it's something I've never done before, never had any part of before, and always wanted to do. So that was really powerful. But like all of it, you know, like Akua McMorris, who's one of my best friends and phenomenal photographer, she's captured me and other people in a way that I didn't know was possible. Dora Lamb, who does the live painting, she paints artists and musicians as they perform at the Jazz Cafe mostly, but all around this sort of scene. And you know, she does this phenomenal work, and it's on my wall over there. You can just kind of see it in the corner. And then also Lucy Gledhill, who is a phenomenal metalsmith and jewelry maker. She donated all of this amazing jewelry for the piece and for that, which all led up to this theatre piece. And I think after Saturday night, you know, having been in it, the spoken word artist Poetica and Guy Kelton Jones, Muti, as I said, as creative director, Charlita and Honey, who did the costume, Daniel, who did the visual effects, Tile, who did the sound, Dennis, the lighting engineer at Rich Mix on the day, my sister Pembe, who was the production manager, like everyone, every single person involved in every way. The dancers like Corey, Grace, and Andre, everyone who's been involved in every way, they're just phenomenal what they're doing to sort of have 5 years of work kind of culminate in this moment was truly special. And we only had 5 weeks to put it off. We had 5 weeks to put on an entire theatre show, and we done it. And it was, you know, a lot of things were kind of improvised because we hadn't had a lot of time to sort of to practice it through in the event. But that sort of balance between, you know, preparation and skill and professionalism and being able to kind of improvise and freestyle, it just came together in the most beautiful way, man. So it's like, yeah, I love it all, but I guess that as a moment on Saturday night was truly special.
I think being able to put your hands on something and create something is such like an underrated skill, like today as well. There is relatively like metalsmith, that's not like I say, not a career path anymore as such is, more like consultants, I guess. My granddad made my auntie a pair of clogs. If you asked me to make a pair of shoes, I wouldn't know where to start. I had to repair our light switch in our bathroom with a piece of string the other day. Wow, women in STEM.
No, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. So much of what I do is digital. Do you know what I mean? Like from the music to the, you know, the recording of the music to, you know, I did a lot of the graphic design in terms of like the album cover and stuff like that. And so it's like so much of what I do is on the computer. And then so to watch people and experience them doing these sort of like physical labors. And I think that the dance counts for that as well. You know what I mean? Like I do a certain level of exercise, but to see these lot like embody an idea, you know, to watch Mutti with the dancers, directing them, and with all of us, like he's kind of he's pushed me to be involved in all of the like warm-ups and all of the sort of research and development for the theatre show, right? And so to see people like embody these things, it's not just me sitting down at a computer or with a notepad writing, you know what I mean, or composing or whatever you want to call it, like it's living it physically. Do you know what I mean? So I completely agree that there's a power in that. And then again, with the music, like the drumming, you know, hopefully at some point I can put you in touch with Denver to hear him talk about it, because the way he talks about it is it's such a spiritual thing to, you know, and you can't really capture it in the recording. You know what I mean? Like you have to be there to feel the drums touch your soul and touch your spirit. You know what I mean? And the same with the kora. Like it's a storytelling instrument. It's not made to necessarily be recorded and put out there in the world. It's made to be experienced live, and vibration is always experienced better live. And so that's why it felt so important to not just, I don't say just to like denigrate anything. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm grateful and again blessed to be able to record music and to share it with people in this way, but I want this to have as many different outputs and ways for people to enter it as possible. And so if you only ever see the film, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? That's wonderful. If you only ever listen to the music, that's fine. But to come and be in the space with us, I feel like will give people a completely different experience. And that's why I want to put so much energy and effort into taking this around the country, taking this around the world, and connecting with people and finding ways for as many people as possible to connect in person, physically with the work, you know.
And throughout all of this journey, where would you say you kind of sit within the relative parts of the drummer, the warrior, or the storyteller now? Would you say that you can, I say confine, would you say that you can assign yourself to one of those, or?
No, I think I'm all three, and I think I'm striving to be all three. I think I've always been all three, and I think not always. I think I've been all three for a long time, and I think everyone in it is. Do you know what I mean? I think that was something I had to really struggle to try to get across to people through the making process. Was like people would say, okay, so which character is this, and which one is this, and is this now the drummer or is this the storyteller? And I really have to keep trying to stress the point that I don't see them as different entities. You know, like there's different roles maybe at different times. There's maybe different moments to be or to embody each of them. But like I said, it's like, to me, it's making music that calls people, making art that calls people. Through that process, you're fighting the war that we are forced into as a people. You know what I mean? Like we're constantly under attack and constantly under threat, and there is not one way to fight that. And so making art and making music that calls for a different way, that demonstrates resistance, that recaptures and takes control of narratives is fighting the war. You know what I mean? Like to me, and then documenting it all, channeling the stories of our ancestors and the stories of our people and the stories of our children and the futures that are to come is the storytelling. And for a long time, I didn't consider myself to be a storytelling MC. Like you get certain people who are, you know, people like Outkast and Slick Rick and Raekwon, you know what I mean? They're kind of like hailed up as these storyteller MCs who like specifically tell stories. And I didn't think of myself as that. I set myself up very much to be like a a barer, you know, like a barist. Like I come and I shell. That's what I do. You know what I mean? And it's taken me until now to recognize that I'm also telling stories. You know, I'm doing it in maybe a more abstract way or a non-linear way, but it's still telling stories of what I've been through and what I've lived and what I've seen and what I've been told and what my people have been through and my ancestors have been through. And it's not just a thing to be taken lightly. Like it's a long, ancient history of the griot or the gele, depending on, you know, your language, that has survived in us throughout all of the violence and all of the history and all of, you know, enslavement and colonial violence and imperial violence and, you know, racist violence. We're still here. And that's the reason why we as a people can create these genres, because that's what we do. It's not, you know, they try to denigrate us and say that we don't have a history because it's not written down, which also isn't true. Do you know what I mean? Like we write our history, we have written our history, but we also have this oral tradition of storytelling, which I remember being told in university that was like, that the oral tradition is inconsistent and it's unreliable. But, you know, the idea that there's like these old landed, wealthy white men just writing history down as if that's not biased. Do you know what I mean? And you lock that bias into one set of things and then tell the world, this is the truth. That to me sounds a lot less reliable than a group of people having different perspectives, having to learn the history and then share it and know it all to be able to share it to the next generation. Sounds a lot more reliable than a lie locked on a page, pretending that's the truth. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, to me, it's like all of that is in each of the people who are involved in this. They're all doing each of these things, you know? So, yeah.
Oral tradition is so important as well, because throughout, like, I remember even from when I was at university, like the traditions of like telling stories, it is so culturally ingrained in passing on information through even like fables and stuff like that. But the more that we kind of lose I say the outskirts, but the less spoken languages, the more information that we actually use, because there's just simply not a translational word for that.
Yeah,
like I find that, to me, that's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And a language dies every day. You know, people take it for granted that there's like, you know, 5 or 6 languages in the world, but there's thousands. And every time that a people are forced out of their homes, are, you know, forced off their lands, are murdered, you know, there's wars happening now all over the world that aren't spoken about, you know, and aren't given the care and the need and the respect that other ones are. Yeah. And people are being murdered, and those cultures are being destroyed to this day as we speak. And the thing about language is that it's not just a means of communication, it's an encapsulation of ways of thinking that are communicated through language. And so, like, for example, I don't speak any other languages fluently, but having lived in China for a little bit, I picked up a little bit. And just one very simple example that I can speak to is the tenses in simplified Chinese are they're not the same as in English, right? And so it's not like I went or I will go. It's we. If you're gonna meet someone, you say it's like we meet this time. You know, and so it's not the same as it's a very different way of thinking. And so as that started to get into my brain, I had to shift my way of thinking around time, you know, and so it wasn't like, oh, what are we going to do in the future? It's kind of this ever-present time that then you kind of navigate around. Whereas in English, it's very much like, this is the past, that is the future. There isn't really a now because it's only momentary, right? And so these hugely different overstandings of what time is are inherent into the way you think and the way you build a culture and a society around these things, you know? And in many, many, many indigenous African and other cultures around the world, this concept of time isn't this like arrow of time European way of thinking about things, right? In many many African cultures, there's a concept of just time sort of being always, it always is, you know. So the idea is that we are our ancestors. They don't exist in the past. They're not people who passed away. Like, we are them. We are an embodiment of what they're doing. We are our future ones to come, you know, is something that, when, you know, people talk about sort of Black person time and we're late and all these other kinds of things and whatever else, one, so much, we face so many different pressures that aren't spoken about, right? So if I'm late for something, it's because I might have to do 10 things that someone else might not have to do to be able to get there, one. But then two, also culturally, right? And even if we've been here for, like, you know, however many decades, if we've been in the West, you know, for however many hundreds of years, for thousands of years before that, we didn't subscribe or operate in this way. So genetically, you know, spiritually, we don't operate within this idea of a clock, you know what I mean? And there being a time for having to do things. And a lot of that even is very new, even in Europe. Do you know what I mean? It's the working day being like, capitalism subscribes when you need to wake up. You know, daylight saving only exists to maximize productivity within a capitalist system. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's nothing to do with us. So if to be somewhere at 9:30 for a job don't even really make sense to us spiritually or culturally, right? And so if all of these things are packed into language and packed into culture, when they're gone, they don't exist anymore. You know what I mean? And the human experience loses out on this diversity and on this multiplicity and on this multitude, right? So when you hear this kind of very basic, reductive, European, Western, male, capitalist bullshit, you know what I mean, of like survival of the fittest, and that's, you know, they're dying out because they're weak. It's like, nah, they're dying out because you're fucking murdering them, innit? Do you know what I mean? And that isn't what anyone who wants a fruitful, productive, multiplicitous world would want. But that's what capitalism needs to sustain itself, you know? And so anything that can be done to fight that, to me, is a positive thing.
I know that there's certain like nomadic cultures that have the same word for time as they do for distance. Because like saying, oh, somebody is so many miles away is the exact same as saying, oh, they are half an hour away, which I just think is incredible to actually think about. And there's actually no differentiation between there because it's a lifestyle.
Yeah,
so off topic right now. I'm having a great time.
I don't think we're off topic. I think this is the topic, man. This is the work. This is what I'm saying. This is
the topic.
Fully, man. Fully.
Rolling. What I do want to get on to speak about as well is your latest EP, Set Our Sights. I wanted to know a little bit more about yourself as a musician. If we've been talking a lot about kind of different multimedia art, but to kind of hone it back in and see what people out there can listen to.
Yeah, that was a single that I put out with Lab 79. So that's my brother Manage, who, again, he's one of my elders, and he's one of the people who brought me in when I was very young to that scene. You know, like, it's hard to kind of, there's a lot of ego with rappers, do you know what I mean? And he's one of them people who, from when I was very young, took the time to be like, nah, I'm feeling what you're doing, like, let's work on some stuff, let's do some things. He helped bring me on tour with them lot. He was involved with a group called Caxton Press, who did amazing bits kind of around sort of 2013, 2014. Yeah, he started up Lab 79 with people like Skirmish, Rain, Menace Mendoza. So all these guys who were in sort of other sort of big underground rap groups like Rhyme Asylum and Dark Side of the Moon, who were big on the kind of battle scene as well. He basically was just like, right, I'm gonna do this thing, and I want to just work with people I like working with and people I get on with, and done that. And that was the first single that I put out with them. They've been putting out singles steadily for a year. We've got the 2-year anniversary coming up at the end of the month at the Bird's Nest in Deptford. And so, yeah, it's an honor to be working with them, man. And they've all gone, again, sort of been around the world doing this thing for many years. And their whole the whole plan is to have every track that comes out with a fire beat, fire lyrics, and a great visual. Do you know what I mean? And not just like videos, but also the artwork attached to it is always dope. And so, yeah, just another community I'm really happy to be a part of. And there's going to be more coming. We did a show, Brixton Jam, which is a bit of a full circle for us, because like Manage used to run with DJ Snuff, legendary DJ Snuff used to run Speaker's Corner down there and end of the week out of Brixton Jam. So we kind of come home with the Chaos crew. Big up TJ Chill and the Chaos crew, like proper pioneering OGs of our scene. And they put us on with people like Kashmir and Teach and Receptor Records. And we just shut down this show the other day, and it's kind of been like a really beautiful full circle moment that we're now looking to build on and do more with, you know. So yeah, just look out for Lab 79 and everything that we're doing, you know.
I love that you mentioned that the whole prerogative was to have like fire lyrics and a fire beat. If you were like, yeah, no, it's just gonna be a bit shit. Just once someone say that, just be like, yeah, it's a bit mid.
Yeah, no, that don't run. It don't run. And you know, it's the kind of thing where if it ain't fire, it ain't coming out. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. You know what I mean? Like it's not about disrespecting no one. It's not about like telling no one that they're shit, but it's just like, you know, these are rappers. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are wordsmiths, you know, like they're not average MCs, you know. So the level is incredibly high. And again, it's not to say that, you know, other people aren't or whatever. And I know there's a lot about the dance and a lot about the vibe, but this is like real, like lyrical music, you know. This is like headbanging, headphones, mosh pit music, you know. It's not have a dance kind of thing. And that's, you know, I'm not saying, you know, Drummer Warrior Storyteller is very much let's have a dance and let's vibes out and let's get down with the vibration. Lab 79 is bars, you know, straight up.
I know that the art is so progressive, it's so continual and still developing, but if you had like any sort of advice or words for those beginning out there looking to either put on a similar thing as Drummer Warrior Storyteller or just get started in music, what's kind of the top things that you have to say to them?
That's a very good question. I think it's like, one, take time, but don't waste time. I think I spent a lot of time not really knowing what I was trying to do. And I think when people I've seen be really successful, and I don't mean just in terms of like, you know, fame or fortune or whatever, like the people who have really strong practices and make really excellent work, they kind of have a vision of what they know they want to achieve. And so I think if you can figure that out, the earlier you can figure that out, the more purposefully you can move, you know. And so I think that's something I wish I'd been told. And I think, but also that's not always possible, you know. Sometimes it is important to make mistakes and to throw things out there and for them to not work, and to learn, you know. And so I think like persistence is also a big thing. I remember saying when I was like maybe 20, I was like, if this ain't really happening when I'm 25, I'm going to quit. Do you know what I mean? Because I want to do a lot of other things with my life. And if this isn't the thing that's going to help me do that, then I'm just going to quit. And I'm still here like 10 years after that point. And I said I was going to quit. And when maybe, you know, I would have done if but then also it's like, I couldn't. Do you know what I mean? Like I literally did my first album 2013 and then left the country and just bounced, you know what I mean? And not to stop doing it, but just I needed to get out of it. I needed to go and see something else. And within 3 months of being in Beijing, I was on the hip hop and reggae and drum and bass scene out there, because those are my people. That's who I am, you know? And so I think finding your people is also a massive thing. Like I think you might have a vision of like where you want to be and where you think you want to be, but you'll kind of know when you meet your people, you know? And then when you meet them, you know, look after each other, cherish each other, work together. Not everything has to be a competition. Like I think there's a thing around musicians, especially rappers, especially, that we're kind of trained to that we have to see each other as opposition or as competition, and I think that's bullshit. I think it's like, you know, there's no need for this idea that competition is the only thing that breeds skill. I don't subscribe to that at all. I think you know, you can push each other to do more, to be more, without having to rip each other down, you know? And that's something that at the end of the week has really taught me. Like, it came out of the battle scene, and then instead we forged it into a thing where we didn't have to battle, but could work together. And as a result of that, we've got 20-something chapters around the world of communities of hip hop heads who, when we come together, are like a super team, you know, like, and so I think, yeah, finding your people, taking time to invest in your craft as well. Like, I think that's something that people often chase the fame and the fortune. And again, I think that can have its merits. You know what I mean? As if your goal is to be the most famous artist in the world, do it. You know what I mean? Like, but if that's not necessarily going to make your work good, do you know what I'm saying? Like, or of a certain quality, of a certain caliber. And I think the people who I respect the most and who I appreciate the most, even if, you know, even when they're at those levels, you know, of being the greatest, because that was their goal, first and foremost, their work is quality, you know, high quality stuff, and they are invested in it, and they're passionate about it, and they deeply care about what they do, you know. And I kind of feel like if that's not you, then maybe you're not doing the right thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and when you find that thing that you are passionate about, like, grab it with both hands and dedicate your life to it, you know. And if you don't want to do it and you want to give up at some point, give up also, you know. Like, I don't think there's pressure. If you want to change and you want to go and do something different, do that. You know what I mean? I think there's an indigenous people in the Americas, and I forget the name of who it is, but they have a saying that, like, a life well lived is if when you're on your deathbed, you have good stories to tell about your life, you know. And I like that a lot more than having a big pile of cash. Do you know what I'm saying? Or having a bunch of awards or something like that, you know. And so if that's what you get out of your life, to me, that's a life well lived as well, you know.
And with that passion that you have, where do you see it taking you next?
This thing's going around the world. Like, I know it. There's no, like, I know, like, when you're in a split situation like we was in on Saturday night, we've already had people coming up and offering us stuff, and the feedback from the community has been massive. And the long-term goal of this is to take it to different places, connect with primarily African and Caribbean diasporic people, and connect with local drumming cultures, local storytelling cultures, local music cultures, spoken word cultures, and plug in what we're doing to what they're doing, you know, and to continue to grow the thing. And so we've already got family out in Uganda. We were supposed to go in November, but the thing we were doing got postponed to next year. I've got people in Zimbabwe already talking about bringing us out over there. I've got family in Brussels, in Paris, who are already talking about doing stuff with. And so, yeah, we're just looking to connect with people around the world and culturally exchange different methods and modes of storytelling and drumming and hip hop and spoken word and poetry and storytelling. And that's what I'm saying. I genuinely think this is what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's time consuming, but it's also living, as I said, and it's ongoing. But I genuinely also feel like it's something that people need, you know, and everyone who's involved with it has that same passion, and will find more people who do, because it's quite magnetic, and it genuinely feels like the Most High and the ancestors are pushing us to do this. So when you get that responsibility, you don't walk away from it, you know.
And where can, like, our listeners, if they were interested in hearing more of what you do, where could they go first? What could they listen to, subscribe to?
Best thing is to just go to my website, so apexzero.co.uk. Everything will be on there. I'd also recommend people checking out Village 101, who are the people who put us on Saturday night and have been integral to this. We recorded the film in Village 101. Muti is a visionary and has been sort of really behind this all the way through, but the work is going to be out on Global Faction. The film is going to come out on Global Faction on November 11th, and the music will be out on all digital streaming platforms from November 11th, the first set. So we have like, it's going to be coming out in sort of waves. And so the first film and the first set of music will be out on November 11th. The second one will come out early next year, and then we'll put out the whole album a little bit after that. And I'm sure we're going to be doing pop-ups and maybe some smaller events, maybe some bigger events from between now and then, you know. So just sort of, if people come to the website, keep going back to the website, there'll always be news updated. And you can get me on Instagram. I only really use Instagram. I don't really vibe with a lot of other social media. So apex.zero, all spelled out, ZERO, on Instagram is the place to connect and holler.